Usually these type of pivots, from dentistry to $1 million creative business happens gradually in these pivots. How was your kind of pivot?
I was practicing dentistry for about 3 years. I was getting more and more unhappy. When I was a kid, I would lock myself in my room and write these stories all day. It's a really good reminder about childlike curiosity being a signal for something to follow. Yeah. The key concept that I teach people now if they want to build a product is that throughout, we validate before we create.
From dentist to digital entrepreneur, Kieran Drew built $1 million creative business by mastering the art of writing online. He's helped thousands of creators and entrepreneurs turn words into revenue, and today, he's revealing exactly how.
If everyone says no, fantastic. You just haven't wasted 4 months of your life writing a dental guide. You've got to keep constantly.
No, it's a very interesting story. So, when usually these type of pivots, from dentistry to $1 million creative business happens sometimes gradually in these pivots. How was your kind of pivot and how did you make that turn? Was it sharp over time? Like, just curious to hear how you made that transition and why you made the transition.
I guess the best way to describe it is slow then sudden. So I was practicing dentistry for about 3 years, and you train for 5 years beforehand. So it's kind of you were on this path for about a decade, and I was getting more and more unhappy. And when COVID hit, I was pretty burned out. I wasn't really that fulfilled at work, and I began exploring my curiosity, and I stumbled across writing. And I sucked, but I was just writing every morning, just kind of putting in the reps. It was really fun having a creative skill. And I wrote for about 13 months. And my plan, I'm usually a very risk averse guy. My plan was to write for 5 years and, gradually build up the leverage to, transition out of dentistry. And what happened was I was about to start a new job. It was a 3-day-a-week job. I was doing 6 days a week of dentistry before. So, beginning that change, my boss called one day and he was like, the job isn't ready. We'll just take a month off, go relax, go on holiday, and then we'll get started. And I was so happy running up and down my flat thinking I've got so much time off. And then I realized I was happy because I could write more. And it was like a switch. I was like, this is an opportunity to go all in. So I ended up just burning all the bridges and giving it a good shot.
Wow. So I'm curious, by the way, too, are you technically still, do people need to refer to you as doctor or is that done?
It's done. Yeah.
You earned it, right? I don't know. That's why. Okay. Fair.
Actually, I was told to keep renewing it, but I refused to renew on the first year. I thought there's a million other things I'd rather do than look in people's mouths again.
That's fair. So how did your family react when you made this call?
Yeah, they were a little bit concerned. Understandably, it kind of sounds a bit like a midlife crisis, but it was quite funny because I actually wrote in secret for a long time because I was very scared of people's judgment. Wasn't very good, didn't know what I was doing, those sort of things. And then one time I called my mum before I actually quit my job, and I was like, "It's gonna sound really weird, but I think I want to quit dentistry." And she was like, "What? Like, you spent so long working on this?" And then I was like, "Yeah, I want to be a writer." And she was like, "Oh yeah, okay." And I was like, "What do you mean, okay?" And she said, when I was a kid, after school, I would lock myself in my room and write these stories all day. And
wow.
I had no clue. Yeah, I had no clue. Like, I had completely forgotten about this sort of stuff. And it's a really good reminder about childlike curiosity being a signal for something to follow, particularly this day and age when we're online.
Right. It's funny because, I've heard that before too, where people are like, oh, a lot of people end up, they grow up, then they're looking at what do they do for college? But oftentimes the signal is, well, what do people around them suggest that they do? Or where's the money? Or where is that? Instead of looking at, oh, what is it that I always did as a kid that I did because I loved, and, that you can lean into and do some more. So that's pretty fascinating that's ultimately what you came back. Of course, then at that point too, you're probably like, hey, mom, maybe you should have told me this as I was heading off. No, I'm sure you had to go that path to really know how much you cared about it. So,
What about the writing process is it that you love that drew you back into it? If you like what you're seeing and you want to see more, be sure to click on the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell. It lets YouTube know you want to support the This Is the Way podcast, and it helps spread the word, and we greatly appreciate it. And now,
Back to the episode.
I think I'm pausing because there's so much that I love. I think the most special part for me with writing is the act of putting thoughts on paper. It's fascinating to see how you think and how poorly you're thinking, really, actually. When you have an idea, you start writing about it and you realize how unarticulated it actually is. You think you know it, you put it on, and then the blank page is pretty brutal. And then there's just this act of iteration of sharpening your thoughts as you go. And I love that element of communication, when you're getting crisper. And the fun part of this creative act, writing is like painting a picture. And you also get to make an impact as you're doing it. So there's a really cool feedback loop, like the better you write, the better the response of your audience, the more you want to write. And it's just ended up being a complete obsession for me.
So then, no, at this point, here you are, you've decided that's the route you want to go. How were you eyeing actually making a living doing it? Because a lot of people would put, writing more into the arts and, or one of these other categories where it just doesn't seem like it's a smart financial decision. Obviously, you've proven that wrong, but how did you first approach that?
Yeah, I mean, initially I thought to be a writer, you had to be you're either a best-selling author or you lived in your mom's basement, right? Like there was
Right, exactly.
there's no in between. And I think that's where a lot of the fear for my family came in and my friends, where they were like, there's like stories about me at university or around circling around university. People are like, oh, he's become a writer, like bless him, sympathy in the eyes. But yeah, as we know, writing is a pretty profitable thing online. And my initial plan, which was ultimately way off of where I've ended up, was that I had found Twitter about 9 months before. And from there, someone had introduced me to copywriting. And actually, I had found copywriting about a year and a half before, and I was reading Gary Halbert's Boring Letters, and I was like, what is this crap? Like, it's like sleazy car salesman stuff. And I threw it away, and like, what a mistake, because copywriting is just persuasion through the written word, right?
Yeah.
And so my plan when I quit was, look, I don't need to make $1 million. Literally all I want is to cover my bills so I could sit here, drink tea in my slippers, write and read. And I was like, surely I could get someone to pay me $2,000 a month to do this, because the internet is full of millionaires that are 18 years old, right? And I quit. And then I just remember thinking, oh, this is going to be so easy. And it was hell on earth. It was a lot harder than I expected. And I always warn people now that it's like getting your first client is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And we kind of breezed past that part.
And why do you think it is so difficult? Like, have you learned things where you are now where it would be a lot easier, or was it a mindset? Like, what is it?
I think we can look internally and externally. Internally, you project out your beliefs, and people say charge what you're worth, but it's hard to charge what you're worth when you think you're worth nothing. So there's that element of, for example, as a dentist, I was a pretty successful cosmetic dentist for my age in particular. I'm charging people £5,000-10,000 for cases. I was scared to ask for like $50 as a writer. Because I just I was in my own way, in essence. So a lot of imposter syndrome around there. Externally, however, particularly these days, I just didn't have the proof. I just thought you turned up with Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers and you made this ridiculous guarantee and the money just landed in your lap. But particularly now, trust is at an all-time low. And so proof is persuasion gold dust, right? And so the thing that I kind of stumbled through that I now help with all my clients is, if you want to start in a new niche, new offer, and you haven't got testimonials and case studies, you start for free. You just get evidence, because that evidence leads to self-belief, and it also leads to belief from the people that you want to serve.
Right. It's so interesting too with that, where it's so easy to underestimate the testimonials, because at times people are like, yeah, but it is true that most of us, when we purchase too, when we go through, we are looking at, seeing others that have done this, that decreases our chance of making the wrong investment or something like that, and increases our chance of success. But it is so interesting how even no matter what business actually you're in, that's such a key piece of it. So
100%. Yeah. It also it's very good for dictating your content too as well, which is something that people overlook. People are like, oh, what should I write about online? And I'm like, man, you just need to interact with people. And every conversation, you don't need like a case study to create content, right? It's like every conversation, every question, every interaction, all of these things become the framing of your content, so that when you are in the DMs talking to people and they read your profile, they're not like, oh, this guy's just a chump with templates, right? This guy's actually in the arena getting results for people. So it's a really cool flywheel, and I just wish that people will put themselves out more, put themselves out there more to get
yeah.
that up and running.
Well, I think it's that same fear of like that rejection and who am
Oh,
I and how do I do it that you gotta push past. But I think what you also just said is pretty critical there, even though it's also very difficult because people will get in their own way. They know they need those things, but they still don't. How did you finally get yourself out there to do so? Was there advice or something else that you had for somebody who's like, I got to do this? Or did you just naturally almost start doing it by accident and realize, oh, this works?
yeah. I mean, it's probably not a tactic that I would encourage, but I just waited until my savings were so low that I was terrified.
That does it. Yeah, it's to
Uh,
burn the bridge. Yeah.
yeah, like this it was great. I had a bit of a buffer, and I always tell people there's two sides of this. Someone will say, don't leave your job until you've replaced your income. I disagree with that. That's definition of a golden handcuff. It's replace your job when you can cover your costs. I quit a little bit before that, so fear ended up being the driver of action, which is the same for most of us.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I would have kind of engineered that fear myself by, let's stop focusing on the outcome and start focusing on the output. And
Mm.
so, if I have a client, actually, I just working with a guy now, he's been terrified like many people, he's like, hey, I've been creating content for a year. It's not really going that well. I really want clients. And I was like, cool. So how many DMs are you sending a day? And he was like, yeah, not really, a couple a week. And I was like, well, let's send 20 a day and see what happens. And, I just met up with him in London, and he was like, man, the rejection doesn't hurt anymore. And when the rejection doesn't hurt, you suddenly approach the conversation from confidence. And, he's got 3 clients as a result so far. So
Yeah.
really just focusing on the output over the outcome is a brilliant way to get going.
Yeah. I have a friend who runs a home services business, and what's become popular for a lot of them when it comes to, the door-to-door sales, which is sort of like, DM to DMs, however you want to say, sort of that, but is that they hire actually return missionaries because they've had so much rejection going door to door already that they're over that part. So by the time they show up, like they're like, no worries, we got this. And anyway, it's slowly becoming this thing that I say slowly. It's in certain communities, it's already huge, but it's like they're already over that fear, and now it's like go. So anyway, in DMs, I think about that similar. How do you get enough of those in that you ultimately can approach it in a way that you're like, you just know it. One more thing I'll have to say on this. Art and I used to work with this guy named Tony. This was back in our early days when we sold women's shoes. Tony was always getting numbers. Tony was not necessarily like the most attractive guy. Tony would admit that. So I could say that without, knocking Tony. But he put in the reps. He just did it all the time. And he even said that at one point. He's like, dude, he goes, I know I'm going to get rejected most of the time, but the ones when I don't, that's when it pays off. And anyway, I think that's the piece that it's like, that wisdom there, but yet it's still so hard sometimes for people to push themselves to it. And I think the other thing that you said there is so key, that leverage, because even for you, once your money ran out or was running out, now it's like, you got to do it because, up to that point, you have the safety net to still fall back on. And I've been guilty of the same thing. And it's like, until either preferably you don't want that to be gone. So if you can engineer it, as you mentioned, and start making it so that whole thing that you said about the outcome, I think that's a brilliant, way to think about it instead. So I love that.
Yeah. Can you, you mentioned earlier how getting that first client is like the most difficult thing you could do. Can you walk us and kind of go deep in how did you get your first client and what was the offer? Like, what were you selling that attracted that first client?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned that when I quit my job, my original plan was to write for people as a copywriter. And that was as far as my plan went. So there wasn't really a plan.
And you rejected the book on copywriting for people, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And like I was doing a little bit of like engaging with people, but I didn't really have an ICP or an avatar to work with. I didn't really know what I was doing, and so I made a decision to just double down on content for a while, because I was like, well, what's exciting me here? And it was the writing, and what's not, it's the outreach. So I was like, let's just focus on the energy for a while and give yourself free reign there. And that actual process of getting good in public began to attract a higher caliber of attention, right? Not clients, but conversations, people that were just interested in what I was up to. So I'm a big fan of building in public for that reason, because, at first no one pays attention, but you get good and they will eventually pay you money. And anyway, I realized that I wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. And so I just started saying yes to anyone who was asking me questions like, hey, do you know about this? Hey, can you help with that? And so I started helping for free as much as I could for people for a good couple of months. And when I say helping for free, I was not an expert writer, still don't consider myself an expert writer, but there were a few things that I cracked, right? So, for example, I could write tweets and I had overcome writer's block. And these are like very common problems. And, you don't need to be an expert to have something worth saying in this regard. You just need to be 2 steps ahead with energy and problem worth solving. And anyway, I was doing that for a while. And how my client actually came about was I had joined a cohort, which I think is a fantastic way for creating connections with other people. And at the end of the cohort, one of the guys there was like, hey, look, the teacher was okay. I really like what you've been saying in these calls. Can I work with you? And I was like, oh shit, man, terrified, right? I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna fish this dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's either an evil genius or a really good friend, but he ended up paying me $500 for 10 1-hour calls, unlimited writing critiques, and WhatsApp support. So I think I could have made more money flipping burgers in McDonald's, but I didn't care. Like
Paid writer.
hell yeah, man. And like I remember, like I got the payment notification when I was walking on the river, and I ran home and I was like, I'm gonna make this the best $500 this guy's ever spent.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, he quit. Well, now he has quit his corporate sales role. He has a multi-six-figure coaching business. He's traveling the world.
Amazing.
And I have this case study that I've then managed to turn into 7 figures.
So yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so in that scenario, is that then when your pivot came, for like a better way to put it, where you started? Because at first you were just going to do writing for others, but now it sounds like you're like, well, wait a minute, there's something here where you're actually coaching and guiding others. Is this where the evolution to that happened?
100%. So I'm a huge fan of following your energy, and I've always been a teacher. So at university, I would teach all my friends how to pass their exams. Often they would beat me, which is funny. But I was always the one teaching. Like I really found it special. And I think that particularly for writers, a lot of us are born teachers. And so more and more requests came in from there. And actually, I started getting ghostwriting clients. So one guy was paying me $500 for a Twitter thread. And I remember thinking, like, you know what I used to do for $500 as a dentist? Like blood, tears, stress. And so I was like, this is it. This is the money. And I wrote 2 threads for him. And then I had to give him a call and be like, yeah, I'm out. I don't like this, because it just wasn't that fun. And so, I mean, you say like, is this the pivot? I pivoted more than a ballerina over the past 3 years. But it has been like a progression of evolution there of just what people are asking for. And yeah, and then you just kind of had a teaching business as a result.
So then today, maybe describe a little bit more of exactly what you do and how you help people.
Yeah, sure. So the current evolution of the business is that I love working with impact-oriented entrepreneurs who want to grow their brand and business through writing online. So a lot of that is around writing for relationships and writing for connection, but also having a great kind of system and mechanism in place so that we can convert some of that attention into impact and income. And a lot of it, what I've found is that people are building businesses that are out of alignment with who they are. And so, someone comes on and they're like, hey, I want to get paid writing or get paid doing this. And, we often work out what is the thing that's lighting them up, and then how can we build their brand around that, so that you can have a really cool ecosystem of offers, or maybe one functioning offer, but more importantly, it's all driven by writing.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who I think are born writers that we just had stamped out of us at school.
I think that's fair. School does have a fair share of that. Or you're focused on so many things you don't actually go and really hone the one thing that you might be drawn to a little bit more of the few things. But you said something there though, with this misalignment. So is there an example that you could share and then how you work through that with clients?
It depends on like how meta you want to go. So I have one client at the moment, for example, who he has an animation business and it's going well, but he loves to write. And so like he doesn't mind the animation business, but he's like, man, I've always been fascinated by this writing thing. And he's not really given himself permission to, give that a really good go. He's been writing for a year. And so we're like, look, you can keep going down that route, or do we start again from the bottom and begin building a business that's really driven by writing? Like he loves teaching, helping people write as well. And
Yeah.
so, and when he's doing this, he's like, man, even though like, he's not making six figures yet, he's like, I'm having so much fun. I'm waking up every day excited. Sundays, there's no Sunday blues. I'm just loving what I'm doing. And so that's like a really big transition, right? Kind of
Yeah.
similar to what I'd done. I mentioned the other guy who went from corporate sales where you're making multi six figures, but it's soulless. And now he's a men's health coach. And
Yeah. Okay.
he loves what he's doing because he feels like it's making an impact. And then the other side really is like, are you building an offer structure that really aligns with you? So for example, I had a friend who transitioned into teaching because he was like, that's where the money is, right? Like, everyone online is like, you got to sell education. And he hated it. He was like, what the hell, man? Like I have to wait for everyone to actually take action on what I'm doing. And like, it was like, well, dude, look, yes, education can be really profitable, but if you are like a great done for you person, then you want to be building out a cool agency, right? Like you don't want to be going down that path just because someone else just told you to. I just think a lot of people, kind of what you touched on at the start, we ignore our intuition a lot when external incentives get involved.
Yeah.
And it's really nice just to talk through that with people and realize like, what do you actually want? And I may be a bit brutal about this, but I'm like, we're going to die someday. So you might as well go for the thing that really lights you up.
So then I am curious. So Art and I were having this debate on this, and we're actually working on a future podcast that kind of talks a little bit more on the identity thing. So I'm also curious there, like, what happens if there is somebody that you're talking to who's maybe like they enjoy writing, but back to it with the when it comes to that cold reach out, it's not their thing. Is your perspective on it? It sounds like it might be, is just keep pushing until it gets easier. Or if people don't enjoy that as much, is there the approach of where they're, okay, find your platform, just write all the time, attract your audience like that way? Like, do you think that there's a either or do you think it's and you need to be doing both of these, especially since early in the business, you probably don't have the volume of people coming in to create enough of a customer base that's where the cold reach out comes in handy because you can accelerate that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important that people know what they're optimizing for from an early stage. And so if someone says they don't want to do cold outreach, and I'm like, that's great. How quickly do you want to get paid? And they're like, within 3 months. I'm like, well, best of luck to you.
Yeah,
yeah.
fair.
So if we can play with the time frames, if someone's like, I don't actually need to get paid for a couple of years, then I'm like, well, maybe you don't need to do the cold outreach as intensely. But when someone now says to me, I don't want to do cold outreach, I really like to explore what that means first to people, because quite often it's not the fact that they don't want to do cold outreach, it's something like they don't want to come across salesy or pestering. And when you start to unpack that, it's not because they're coming across salesy, it's because they have a complete misalignment in how they're viewing the world, and they think that reaching out to people and asking about their problems is pushy. And if you can actually help people see their business as a service, like a gift to the world, suddenly being in the DMs and saying, look, if you're DMing with an intention of landing a sale, of course you're going to hate it unless you're just really in it for the money. But if you're DMing people for connection and, like being genuinely curious about people that are interacting with you and in your space, like you do that for 6 months from a really nice intention, and you'll be like, wow, the conversations are the most fun part for me now.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of benefit in trying to unpack your faulty wiring, generally like paying attention to that energy and being like, is that actually true, or what's going on underneath it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Interestingly, I think a struggle a lot of people face regardless of industry. I always think about it. Art and I both, you've talked about this on some of our career related podcasts too, is it's like, even when it comes to people just proactively doing that before they ever need a job and just reaching out and being like, how are you, that versus the point where people do it later when it's all of a sudden, now it feels pushy because you're in a time of need instead of in that time of, almost like, greetings, I want to introduce myself. And if it grows into something, it grows into something. So
100%. Yeah.
It's kind of the difference between the mindset of I'm just building relationships versus I want something in return.
Mm.
I find it that when I'm just genuinely trying to build a relationship, it comes so easy. But
Yeah.
when somewhere in my head is like, okay, I'm trying to see if this person is going to be interested in what I have to sell, then it becomes a little more difficult because my mind is in the wrong place. So yeah, I completely agree. Just to build relationships, not expecting anything in return, knowing that maybe someday you'll figure out why that person you cross path with,
Mm.
the universe will tell you. I've had the most success when I go into it in that mindset.
Mm.
Do you think that this becomes easier on certain platforms more than others, or do you work with your customers across all platforms? Doesn't matter as much.
What in particular becomes easy?
Because like, so for example, LinkedIn is a normal place to sort of reach out in DMs. That's sort of how that platform works a bit more. Whereas like Instagram, you can't get your messages always through to somebody unless they have put you into the good pile, for lack of a better way to say it. Like, there's just some that barriers. I'm not even on X enough to say what that looks like. I think you do have to have a paid version of X, maybe I'm wrong, to message people. Like, so
Yeah. To be honest, man, on the X side, I don't know because I just paid at the start.
oh, okay.
And so I think it's generally a good rule of thumb. If you're going to build somewhere, just give them some money, right? Do it. Whatever advantage.
That's fair.
And then similarly, I'm not sure about platforms specific. My clients really only work on LinkedIn and X.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I'm not too sure.
And is that because they are dominantly writing platforms versus the other ones that are, more video or what have you? That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we have a few people building their writing brand on Instagram as well.
I can see that. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So for you now, you've hit this point as you've progressed where you've hit that, I believe it's the at least $1 million now. You could be like, okay, I've earned, this much from the businesses. And I'm so curious, how does that look for you today? Is it coming in from a one-on-one, a group coaching, a course that you created? Like, how is that being generated?
Yeah, sure. So if we zoom back a little bit, my first six figures, I remember when I made it, I remember waking up at like 2 a.m. one day. I'm staring at the roof. I can't sleep. I've got so much work to do. And, I come and sit at my computer and I'm critiquing writing. And I was like, what the hell happened here? And I said yes to everything. And I think that everyone should do that at the start, by the way. Like, you don't know what you know until you find out.
Right.
And so I had like 7, 8 sources of income. And I was like, well, the thing that is the ceiling here is me. And I'm back in dentistry mode again, right? Like, it's just me and my drills. Now it's all limited by time. And so again, I looked at what I was doing and was like, what's giving me the most energy? And it was a digital product, which was the first thing I'd sold. So I thought, let's do one thing well. And I got rid of all my income. I got rid of all my clients. And I was like, let's go learn about how to build an excellent product. And income plummeted by like 80, 90%. I was making a loss for 3 months. And then I launched my first flagship product, which was high impact writing. And I wasn't sure how it would go. My audience was 10 times the size of my first product launch. So I was expecting maybe 10x, which would have been 30K, which would have been like crack cocaine for me. And because it's still a hefty chunk of money. And it actually ended up making 140K in 4 days.
Wow.
Which is wild. Yeah. And I was like, okay, fantastic. I did not expect that. Let's carry on doing what you were doing and just put your head down, keep working on the product, keep talking to customers. And I closed the product. It wasn't available. I relaunched 4 months later to maybe get a few stragglers, and it was 170K in 4 days.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. And then from there, I kind of ended up, was like, well, let's solve the next problem. And I kept building products. I released my third product a month ago. And so now I have these 3 flagship products, but also a product ecosystem around it because I was building out upsells, all this stuff. And so that means that my revenue is 92% high leverage. And when I say high leverage, digital products, paid newsletter, which I've been running, which has made about 6 figures now, but I shut that down today. So we can talk about that if you wanted. And then the rest has been, I've done 2 group coaching programs. And ironically, so I had a rule, maybe I was scarred as a dentist. I was like, I ain't selling my time anymore. My metric for success was how clear my calendar was. I would have a meeting a month. It was fantastic. And during the summer, again, I had a bit of time to breathe when I finished my product. And I was like, what's most fun for you here? And ironically, it was the coaching calls. And so it's been a bit of a about turn now where I'm like, actually, I've been talking about leverage and freedom. And I'm like, but it's not, freedom isn't actually a lack of commitments. It's committing to the thing you love. And so now the business is kind of building, I would say backwards from a leverage point of view, where I'm taking on more one-to-one clients. And it's a really cool flywheel because I'm writing a book. And to write a great book, one thing I've realized is that you have to be extremely empathetic and very good at human nature. And you just don't get that contact with digital products alone.
I was going to ask, I'm really curious to, like, if somebody was wanting to build a digital product right now, using kind of your formula, what would that be? Like, what made, obviously you had to build an audience, you've had clients, so there's always there's a background there. But what made it so successful? Like the structure of it, like, is there anything that you can share that you could say, outside of having an audience, these are the things that would have made it successful anyways?
Yeah, sure.
And actually, before you say that, could you answer how big the audience was at the time that you launched?
Which launch?
The first one that surprised you when it did the 100 and, 30,000.
I can. I think maybe I was coming close to 100,000 followers.
Okay, got it.
Might
And
have
then
been over,
and did you have an email list as well at that time?
Yeah. So I had an email list, which again, I think was maybe at about 10,000 subscribers. But I'll be honest, like a lot of that list was built using social media giveaways that were designed for virality, not value.
Okay.
So basically a lot of freebie seekers on there, which I found out when I started advertising and no one was paying my advertisements.
But you grew your list, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So probably a lot more of them were from, was it mainly Twitter at the time, or Twitter and LinkedIn?
Mainly Twitter. Yeah. I was late to the LinkedIn party because I think that people got very distracted by social media. So I stayed on Twitter until 6 figures.
That's fair. Okay, so sorry. Then back to Art's question, if you still recall.
Yeah, sure. So guaranteeing a product success. I have a funny story for this. So I just crossed my 5th year of writing in July. And I love marketing. I love storytelling. And I was like, what a brilliant story to go find your first blog post, show how much it sucked. And so I'm digging through my Google Drive and I'm like, where the hell is it? Because the only blog post I could find was from October. And then it all came flooding back. And the first time I started writing, I actually wrote a 78-page guide called Get in Dentistry. And it was my first business attempt was to help people get into dental support, as you could probably tell from the name. And I remember being so excited as I wrote it, and then absolutely terrified when I finished because I hadn't spoken to customers. I didn't have an audience. I didn't have anyone who might want this, and I had no idea if it was good. And so what I did right was I had started with a problem I'd already solved. And what I did wrong was literally everything else. And so the key concept that I teach people now, if they want to build a product, is that throughout, we validate before we create. And so what does that look like? The first thing, as always, with any offer is that it begins with people. And, you have to go out and have conversations to find out if there's a problem. What problem can I solve? And so I actually give a classic dentist mode, but I say, here's my 4E diagnosis method, right? And we're looking for something that's early in the journey. Because it's a digital product, we want this product to actually kind of funnel in for our business, right? So we want wide scope. I said, look, if you're like Gandalf helping Frodo, you're the guide, he's the hero. You're not building for Mordor, you're building for the Shire. So we're early in the journey. We need it to be an emergency. So the classic marketing term is you're not selling vitamin, you're selling painkiller. But actually, we're looking for a bleeding neck. because people don't want painkillers when they're gushing out the neck, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, how bad is this? And often that's a matter of framing, by the way. Like, if someone is saying, let's say a classic, like um, LinkedIn profile optimization, that is not a bleeding neck. But if you're going to help people get an unlimited supply of clients so they don't need to rely on cold outreach, that's a bleeding neck. So there's a bit of framing there. And then the other two is expertise. Am I qualified enough to solve this? Have I solved it for myself? Have I solved it for other people? If you haven't solved it for other people, you go do that for free. And then the fourth one, which people overlook, is, do I enjoy this problem? Do I actually want to solve it? And so once we found that problem, that's the first stage of validating. It's like, great, now we actually have a problem to solve. And that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's go build a product concept. So my mistake with getting dentistry was I built the product, right? And actually, you want to spend 2 hours max designing a transformational solution, taking someone from point A to point B based on the conversations that you've had, calls that you've had with people. And then you're going to go pitch the same people that you spoke to and be like, hey, I have this thing. And based on what you've said, you might really enjoy it. Would you like to do this with me? And you're not framing it like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. It might be a piece of shit. It's, I'm running this the first time and I really want to nail it for people. So I'm looking for motivated people who will come on and I'm going to teach this to you live. You're going to get really close support and one-on-one feedback to achieve your outcome on the basis that you'll give me some feedback and a testimonial at the end. If everyone says no, fantastic. You just haven't wasted 4 months of your life writing a dental guide.
Fair.
If they say yes, we validate it, we deliver it live, and during that live delivery, you're collecting feedback like a squirrel collects nuts. Right? You're just learning as much as you can. At the end of that cohort, which may have been paid, it may have been free, depending on the level that you're at, you have a really cool position where you go, A, do I rerun the cohort at a higher price with more people, maybe with less people, more premium, whatever, and you can really begin to flesh out a business there. Or you can say, shall I productize it? And then when you actually build that product, you know that it works because you've actually taught the information. So I had a friend, she was building a product and she was like, oh, I'm really scared about this whole thing that I'm building because it works for me, but I'm not sure it's going to work for other people. And I was like, well, cool. Have you tried it with other people? And she was like, no. I was like, well, maybe that's the first step. And again, if we go down that route, when you build this product, you know it's in demand because people have bought it. You know it works. You have proof that it works. So that when you actually launch, you can create a wait list and people are aware of it and then they end up buying it. And so it's about going slow to go fast in essence. And that's the approach I take now for every product that I build.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. So then for you, though, those initial products that you mentioned, they were all without coaching or community, or they were just without the coaching component? Like that first batch when you said, you leaned away from the one-on-one, was that still a cohort, just not one-on-one? Like, I'm trying to understand if those ones were full productized when you did those initial launches, or if you did exactly what you just said and then you productized it.
I know all my lessons are painfully learned. So my first digital product, I tried it out with a couple of friends. It was a basic swipe file with a course attached. And it was a piece of shit for round one. I didn't test it. And then, but I started getting feedback from people and I was like, okay, cool. Then when I'd done the high impact writing, which was my first big launch, I ran a group coaching cohort beforehand for 3 months. But the thing that I screwed up was I didn't find that specific problem. Right? I promised the world to all of them. They all came from a range of niches. And that's why I had insomnia, because I just tried to build 7 businesses for people, basically.
Yeah.
And so when I released high impact writing, it was pretty good. It was 100 times better than my first product. But within about 4 months, I was like, it's still not good enough because I didn't test it properly with people. I didn't get really specific on the problem. And so what I ended up doing was actually completely, testing out with people. So I took on more one-on-one work because, my aim is only 90% high leverage income. I had a bit to play with. Tested it with people, taught the frameworks, critiqued their writing, refilmed high impact writing to a high standard. And then I actually gave it to all my current customers for free. And I had a business mentor at the time and he was like, are you mad? This is round 2 of the product. You should be charging for it. And I was like, look, it just reputation over revenue, and I gave it to my customers and I was like, well, we'll also run a launch at the same time, of course. And I was expecting, we'll clean up a little bit here and there. And it ended up being another 6-figure launch because all my customers were like, yo, this is the shit. Let me promote it for you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm a huge believer in optimizing for fans over followers. And a lot of that is about really showing you care about their success and they'll support yours.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's great. I love it. And that's, yeah, I hadn't really taken that approach. Would have seemed risky, but it sounds like it's really paid off. So looks like something Alex would do out of his playbook, Alex Armozy, because you mentioned him before, as he just did his crazy big launch right now that had a lot of that going on there, where people are just like, how do I help, because they appreciate, the individual so much. So
Yeah, for sure.
It's 2025 and AI is everywhere. So I'm just curious, as you look to scale beyond this initial 7-figure, how is AI incorporated into your business and helping you grow more?
Yeah, it's funny. My positioning as a writer is anti-AI, and as an entrepreneur, AI is saving my life.
right? It's funny.
Yeah. So I'm a highly systemized guy. I have one virtual assistant working with me, and we have integrated AI into almost every single step that we can in the business. So if we can make something simpler, if we can make it
Nice.
easier, if we can make it faster, I'll build prompts. And the way I do that is I'll build the prompt, we test it 3 times. And then each week, as we're iterating, I improve the prompt. And that flywheel has been fun. Like when I was in London this week, I had this overwhelming feeling of guilt because I was like, I'm not that busy right now. And the reason being, let's say like a very bare bone basic example, when I write an email, my assistant, so it's not, I literally finish my email, my assistant will run that through Claude. Claude will turn that into a very good social media post. Claude will write the social media version of the CTA. It will extract all the short form content from it too. That's a simple one. Another one is when I have a client call, my assistant will run a series of, we've got 3 prompts. It will extract every single pain point, every problem, every proof point, every desire, and every content idea that I've discussed. She then uploads that into Notion for me with a report so that when I go to write my content, I don't even have to think about what to say anymore. Like I just look and then I do the writing. And that's the important bit here. Obviously, a lot of people are trying to outsource their writing to AI because writing is hard and writing is slow. You are in essence trying to outsource 2 of the most important things, and that's relationship building and thinking. And I saw a very popular creator just post saying, hey, I can now write a 3,000-word essay in 20 minutes. And I had this pang of anxiety because I was like, man, what am I doing wrong here? And then I read the comments and everyone was like, I'm not reading your stuff anymore. Because when everything becomes fake, people really value being real. And I actually have trained Claude to write almost perfectly in my voice. Took me about a month, super, super fun. And I've used it no times because I was like, this is the thinking, right? And, I tell people is that, look, if you want to outsource to AI, yes, you can train it in your voice, but you're probably not a very good writer. So you're training it to write a bad voice for one. And B, the things that people fall in love with is not the perfection, but the rough edges. And so, it's the jokes, it's the weirdness, it's the quirks. And you just don't get that if you're not putting in the reps. And so I think that having this sort of barbell strategy of AI makes you incredibly productive so that you can do the work to be creative. And then you let that writing be an extension of you. I think it's a really cool strategy that people overlook.
I love that. I think the thinking relationships, that's a really good way to summarize it. I am curious, when you mention the prompts and using that way, have you leaned into any of the tools like the NANs or the makes or any of those to actually automate any of the functions in that way?
Yeah, so we have Make running, but I'll be honest. So I have a tendency, I'm hyper independent. So I'm always like, I will go learn all this stuff and I will go build it. Not very useful for starting as an entrepreneur, very bad for scaling as an entrepreneur. Yeah, as you guys probably know. And so I ended up hiring a guy that is slowly integrating Make for me.
Okay.
But he's teaching me at the same time. So that, because I told him, like, I don't like people just doing stuff for me. I'd like to know what's going on.
Know.
Yeah, sure. I always say, like, if it saves you time, it's worth the dime.
That's fair. I there was a situation where I wanted a bookkeeper to show me exactly everything they were doing with QuickBooks for the same reason, but I'll admit somewhere in the process, I'm like, okay, never mind, just take care of this one, please. Because there are some things where you realize, nah. But I do think with some of those, like understanding, because it's a lot of process and flow that, is happening through tools like that. And you really want to make sure that you understand, especially because you're an optimizer. It sounds like you're looking at how you can improve it. And it's not a set and forget it in any of these scenarios, because, you could continue to make it better. And I think that will happen as long as both these tools continue to get smarter, which they do. But also and then you got to change how you prompt. You got to change, the different roles of things that you could put in there. But also just as you keep getting better and better at it, like that you could top it. And then when others start using them, and when there's agents that are coming out that are able to do this, it's like, the edge is going to be to those who keep doing something that is +1 over what their, the standard competitors, for lack of a better way to put it, would do. So I can
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's important that +1 is playing the game that you can win.
Yeah.
So I tried the whole learning AI thing, and I find it interesting, but I'm not fascinated by it. And so I was like, this is taking away from writing. And I don't think there are many people that enjoy writing as I do. And so I was like, let's just go do that more and have faith that,
that's good.
like a rising tide brings up all ships. It's like you find that thing that lights you up and let it light the way.
Do you think you'll package up any of these prompts and everything else that you're building out? Because they sound like they'd be relevant to others in a similar space.
Already done. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I have a product called the AI Vault. And again, it was a really nice invitation to people. The sales page literally said, I'm not an AI expert. I will not teach you engineering. I have no clue about X, Y, Z. But I am a writer and I'm interested in saving time. And if you want access to every prompt I ever build, you're more than welcome. You just need to pay this, and I update it as I update it. And I've made like 40, 50K.
Okay. And that's a flat fee, and then they get any updates? Is that what it is? Okay.
Flat fee, and then it's updated when I build stuff, no commitment on both sides. And it really depends on what's fascinating me at the time. So I'm writing a book now. So they're getting more AI related stuff around writing books and thinking through stuff like that.
Well, that's awesome. And for that one product, like, do any of these products acts as almost more of a not a lead magnet, but in a way, like the self-liquidating funnel, where one of them is a lower price and then they're leading into more of your higher price? Or do you just keep them all as individual products that you just sell at different times?
At the moment, there's not a sophisticated funnel in place. The reason being that, my front-end product to people that get pitched at the moment is $500. And, I know that's not optimal, but I realized actually front-end is not my problem. And so I was there going like, if I had a self-liquidating funnel, I could begin to buy attention. That's really exciting, that sort of stuff. And I was walking with a friend and he was like, oh, so how many newsletter subscribers have you got? And I was like, okay, I've got about 33,000. And he was like, what's the most that any of them have paid you? And I was like, like 3K. And he was like, there's your problem. There you have a list. We have a very high buyer percentage. From what I've been told, it's like 2-3 times the average. And he's like, but there's so many people who probably want to pay for your time that have never been given the option. And so as a test, I sent out a couple of emails with a Google Doc, and I ended up selling 2 10K packages without a sales call. So I'm focusing on that for now. Yeah, very, very humbling. I consider it. And it's, again, I love it. It's the most exciting part of my business.
Yeah.
So I've been focusing on the back end, but we have just started running paid ads. And because I'm writing a book, I'm hoping that book will be the kind of funnel where we start to really unlock a lot more impact.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned before you were shutting something down. What is it you're shutting down as of today?
Yeah, sure. So I have been running a paid newsletter called the Magnetic Content Masterclass. My idea was that people loved my writing critiques, but I couldn't do it at scale. And so I would actually go and find 5 social media posts. I would break down the copywriting and the marketing principles, create prompts and templates. And I was sending that out weekly because I wanted to help my clients write content that would connect. And I'm doing it, and it's a nice experiment. And at one point it was making 5-6K a month. The hourly rate was over $1,000 an hour, fully automated. It's running as smoothly as I can. And my energy level for it was a 6 out of 10. And I'm writing a book that's a 10 out of 10. And I'm sure you guys can relate, but this decision making as an entrepreneur is relentless. The seesawing. Some days I would wake up and be like, holy shit, let's scale this to the moon. Because, at the end of the day, you only just need more eyeballs. So I never actually advertised it either. This was all customers buying it from other products. And I was like, look, you really need to start scaling this. And I got really excited. And then when I go to do it, I'm like, there's something not quite right here. And my issue with it was that I'm paywalling my best ideas. I'm building a paid newsletter that in 3 years' time, if I was honest with myself, do I want to be critiquing social media content? Not really. And so I made the decision. I was like, this is terrifying, but it's only scary because it's a certain source of income. You've got to keep constantly burning things down if you want to get what you want. And I knew it was the right decision when I sent out the email because I had this feeling of lightness, and now suddenly I have more energy for writing the book, but also writing a paid newsletter is a very one-way conversation. And so now I have more space for coaching, which means that my books are going to get better. So it feels like a good bet. It's a little bit scary getting rid of the MRR, but recurring revenue brings recurring problems. And so it's not all sunshine and roses. So it was a fun thing. I wrote 90 editions, so 21 months. It was cool. It was fun. People found it useful. And I'm actually said this is not coming out right now, so people don't need to know this, but the marketing thing on Monday is, hey, it's the funeral of MCM. You can now buy every single edition for a lot cheaper than if you'd read the full thing. We have 4 days of promotion. Yeah, and when you buy it, you also get access to a live training that I'm giving on Thursday. And so I always tell people that like everything is an opportunity to market yourself, and you can actually use it to tell the story of your brand evolving. So it feels cool,
Yeah, I love that. That's actually, and then it's great. I get it. Feels for me. Forgive me as I do this comparison, but just as I look at, Alex really has done some of his and built his audience in this way of doing it. Like where each time people are like, "Man, how do you just keep giving, giving, giving?" It sounds like you have a mentality where you've done that a lot in your business, which I really love. So,
Very quick question: you mentioned Claude, but you've never mentioned ChatGPT. I'm just curious why you've chosen to lean into Claude over ChatGPT.
Claude's a better writer.
Well, Claude is a better writer, but I actually use it's about 50-50.
Okay.
I just wish Claude wasn't so ugly. Yeah, I don't know if you guys get this. Yeah, like it's just so ugly, and like that makes a big difference to UX. So I use ChatGPT for pretty much everything, like questions and thinking related, and Claude everything writing and research related. Because I feel like ChatGPT gets really lazy when it comes to crunching data. Like I actually, it almost screwed me over because when I first built my last product, I had so the way that I do my products is I start building the wait list like 9 months before. When someone signs up to the wait list, they get sent a questionnaire. And so I began gathering a lot of data, and I had like 400 submissions. And I was like, cool, let's pop this in. Let's get the pain points described. And I started building my product, and I started reading the research from ChatGPT, and I was like, wait a second, this sounds like AI. And then I looked in it and made it all up.
Wow.
It made up all the data. Yeah.
Dude, I fight with it all the time, and I'm like, where is that from? Where is this? What is this? And Claude definitely does better that way. I admit, I sometimes run them through both, and then I'll be like, this good. I like this piece here. I like this piece here.
Yeah.
You're checking it for facts in the end because it is unfortunately doing that. You were going to say something before. I don't know if you remember the train of thought when we were talking about you being a big giver. And,
I have a few kind of principles I like to build my business around, and one that's really served me well is over deliver at every opportunity. I just think that people really underestimate the power of reputation. And whilst a lot of my business has been super focused on the high leverage stuff, I've also put a ton of time into doing the things that don't scale. So, for example, when I realized that one of the downsides of building a digital product business is a lack of connection, I sent a thank you video to over 3,000 students manually.
Wow.
Yeah. And I only have just stuff that recently. And it's those little things, or like in the bottom of every email, there's a selfie of me with a sign. And, that's a really nice idea until you start sending, 1,000+ emails a year, and I have to keep taking selfies. It's very annoying.
Yeah.
It's these small touches for over delivering. It goes far, people really underestimate it. And so one thing I like, good exercise for people is that if you just look at the service you're providing and you write out every step and you just said like, how can I make this simpler? How can I make it faster? and you just start adding in little things and people don't expect it, yeah, it goes really far.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so interesting as you say that, because that is one of the areas where probably a year from now, those recordings of what you described, AI will be something people are using for that. People may not know the difference, but then they may lose their value by then, because you'll have to figure out what else somebody does to make it really feel like it's personalized a bit more to them. But when I've got those, messages at times, like they make the difference between me feeling like, oh, this person took a moment, versus the messages that you get that are either in broken English or that don't even, like, you're like, oh, great, I see you inserted my name here, but the rest of it is said, and look, they might work sometimes, obviously, for these people, they may, but there's a difference in
I love it when I get an email and it says brackets first name. Right, something went wrong with automation, and it just says brackets first name.
those hurt though. I had one of those the other day. I'm like, no, what happened? Yeah, when those yeah,
Right,
yeah.
Have you guys played around with Fixer yet? Fyxer?
No.
This is a really cool one. So like I'm a fan of using AI to help you connect with people, and so Fixer will reply to all if it filters your inbox and writes the first draft replies in your voice, and it learns from the conversation. So if I have a client call and they tell me 6 months ago that they were going to a lake with their kids, then it will remind, like when I'm replying to an email, it's like, hey, how was that trip with your kids? And so I don't let it send the first draft, but it's super good because, replying to emails is tiring. But if I see the first draft, and obviously the lake thing's an example, but it will write out an answer that's very close to my reply. And then I'll just delete and edit it in my voice. And I'm still able to really connect with my audience, but the AI is helping it. So it's another cool productivity tool.
Memory recall in some ways. I love that. Like, because I've always wanted to, and Art and I've talked about this different times, and I've created something for this other program I have. I'm like, all right, how do you keep track and these things about individuals? Because for me, that doesn't come natural, but I know it means a lot to people, and if I can find a way to capture this, so that's pretty brilliant that it can, kind of pull that up in that way.
That's amazing.
I'll have to take a look at it.
This has been amazing, enlightening at some point, and also, at least for me, a little bit inspirational, because I feel like I need a little kick in my butt for some of the things that Michael and I try and do. So thank you for that. If people want to hear from you, want to buy your product, or just follow your content, where can they find you?
Yep, just LinkedIn, X, on Twitter, Instagram, Threads. We just started on YouTube as well, so if you just search my name anywhere there. The best place, really, if you like what I'm saying, is come join my email list. I do a lot of building and public reports, business reports, all this sort of stuff, a lot of storytelling. So you'll either hate it or love it, and you can find out about my stuff from that, really.
Great.
Well, thank you for that, and hope everybody enjoyed it, because we sure did.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on, guys.